This is the story of a rising power couple whose dream life masked a deadly secret. Betrayal, control, and a chilling discovery would shatter it all. This is the case of Andrin Macdonald. Before we explore the case, if you'd like to support the channel, hit the subscribe button and stay active. It really helps a lot. Now, let's get into it. They say a successful family business can transform a couple into a thriving, unstoppable dynasty. But just as easily, it can become the spark that ignites betrayal, bitterness, and a very public unraveling. On the surface, building a business with your partner sounds like a dream built on trust, with little risk of deception and all the profits kept within the family. But what happens when that once small venture explodes into a multi-million or even billion-dollar empire? Will it strengthen the relationship, or tear it apart with jealousy, power struggles, and resentment? The case of Andrin Macdonald was both complex and deeply disturbing. From the beginning, there were strong suspicions about who was behind her disappearance. She vanished from her own home without a trace, and few truly believed she was still alive. But with no body and little hard evidence, the case stalled. Months dragged on without answers, and the person many believed was responsible seemed poised to walk free. Then, just as hope was fading, a local rancher stumbled upon a discovery so chilling, it changed everything. Andrin Martina Macdonald, née Anderson, was born on February 18, 1990, in the quiet coastal town of Port Antonio, Jamaica. The eldest of two daughters, she was raised in a modest but loving household by her parents, Marine Smith and Desmond Anderson. From an early age, Andrin stood out for her charismatic personality, natural charm, and striking beauty. She was well liked among her peers, effortlessly drawing attention and admiration wherever she went. While still in high school, Andrin grew close to a young man named Andrin Macdonald. He was 10 years her senior and, like her, had roots in Jamaica. Andre Austin Macdonald was born on December 22, 1981, the only child of Marina and Everton Macdonald. His father had previously been married to a woman named Camila, who passed away early in his life. Eventually, Everton remarried. As time went on, Andre's parents separated, and his father relocated to the United States. He later remarried a third time, settling down with a woman named Hannah Hamilton. In the early 2000s, Andre moved to Florida to live with his father. He was accepted into the International Technical University, where he earned a degree in engineering. Despite earning his degree, Andre chose not to pursue a traditional engineering career. Instead, he joined the military, signing a contract to serve in the US Armed Forces. Throughout his service, he and Andrin remained in close contact. They messaged frequently, spoke often, and reunited whenever Andre returned to Jamaica to visit family. Their connection deepened over time, evolving into a serious and lasting relationship. Once Andrin completed high school, she made the decision to move to the US to be with him. Roughly a year later, the couple held a small, intimate wedding with only their closest family and friends in attendance. Soon after their marriage, Andre received new military orders and was reassigned from Florida to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas. Determined to build a life for herself, Andrin enrolled at the University of Texas, where she later earned a degree in economics. In 2013, the couple celebrated the birth of their daughter, Elena. That same year, they ventured into entrepreneurship, opening their first assisted living facility. The concept quickly took off. Not long after, they launched a second location in a nearby city. Within just a few short years, their expanding network of care homes was generating substantial revenue, turning their shared ambition into a thriving family business. Despite Andre's ongoing military duties, which often took him across the country on assignments, he remained involved in the couple's growing business. But it was Andrin who took the reins, overseeing the day-to-day operations of what had become a multi-million-dollar enterprise. Their success allowed them to enjoy the fruits of their labor. A luxurious home with a pool in an upscale Bexar County neighborhood, a fleet of high-end vehicles, and ambitious plans to expand their business into neighboring states. In 2016, after the passing of her father, Andrin brought her mother from Jamaica to live with them. She moved into the family home, where she provided help around the house and cared for young Alina when both parents were occupied. A few years later, the couple bought her a modest yet comfortable home nearby and gifted her a personal vehicle, a gesture that reflected their growing wealth and gratitude. By early 2019, Andrin, 37 and holding the rank of Major in the US Air Force, opted to transition into the reserves. His goal was to remain in San Antonio, spend more time with his family, and assume a more active role in the business to relieve some of the pressure on Andrin. Their assisted living empire had expanded statewide and was reportedly valued in the hundreds of millions, nearing the billion-dollar mark. From the outside, the Macdonalds were the image of success, a power couple raising a bright daughter, running a thriving company, and living in comfort. But behind the polished exterior, trouble had been brewing, issues that few, if any, outsiders were aware of. On the morning of Friday, March 1st, 2019, alarm bells rang when 29-year-old Andrin failed to show up to work. Her phone was turned off, something completely out of character for her. Concerned, her assistant and closest friend, Caroline Garner, tried repeatedly to reach her, but received no response. After several failed attempts, Caroline, along with two co-workers, decided to go to the Macdonald's home to check on her. Caroline knocked persistently at the front door, but no one answered. Determined not to leave without answers, she walked around to the backyard only to spot something unsettling. A scorched patch of earth with what appeared to be a zipper partially buried in the ashes. It looked like someone had recently burned clothing, but why and whose? She then tested the back door and found it unlocked. Hesitantly, she stepped inside, calling out for both Andrin and Andre. No response. The house was eerily quiet, seemingly undisturbed, yet something felt deeply off. In the bathroom, she noticed reddish smears on the light switch, possibly dried blood, and a few dark stains on the floor that triggered immediate concern. She began taking photos of what she saw and quickly called local authorities to report. The suspicious scene, police responded promptly and launched a search of the home. What they found only added to the growing suspicion. In the master bedroom, the carpet had been aggressively scrubbed with what smelled like industrial-strength cleaning chemicals, the sharp odor still lingering in the air. Though efforts had clearly been made to erase traces, faint bloodstains were still visible on the floor and along the doorframe. Investigators believed something violent may have occurred, though the limited evidence left open the hope that Andrin could still be alive. At the same time, Andre was unreachable. Calls to his phone went unanswered, and no one knew his whereabouts. There was initial confusion over the location of 6-year-old Alina as well, but authorities soon confirmed she was safe and staying at her paternal grandmother's home. All three of the couple's vehicles were accounted for, 2 parked in the driveway, and the third, a Chevrolet Malibu, sitting in the garage. That car immediately drew attention. It was coated in dust, as if it had recently traveled unpaved back roads, and small gravel particles were embedded in its tires. Though it bore no visible blood or damage, the condition of the vehicle was enough to raise suspicions and prompt a deeper investigation, while investigators were still combing through the Macdonald residence. Andre unexpectedly appeared at the front door. He looked visibly rattled, anxious, pale, and slightly disoriented, as if caught off guard by the presence of law enforcement. When questioned about his whereabouts, Andre claimed he'd spent the entire night searching for his missing wife. He named several hospitals he said he had visited, hoping to find her admitted somewhere. A quick follow-up confirmed he had indeed gone to the facilities. He mentioned, but not until the following morning, well after her disappearance. And at one of those hospitals, when the front desk staff told him that someone with the last name Macdonald had recently checked in, witnesses said Andrin visibly panicked. He froze, turned pale, then abruptly stepped back and left without waiting to hear the rest. As it turned out, the patient simply shared the same last name. But Andrin never stayed to find that out. His erratic behavior immediately raised red flags. Investigators brought him in for formal questioning, hoping to clarify the timeline. During the interview, Andrin admitted that he and Andrin had gotten into a heated domestic argument. He claimed he left the house afterward to cool off, and when he returned, Andrin was gone. He said he tried calling her repeatedly but got no response, so he dropped off their daughter at his mother's house and continued looking for her. However, his phone had been switched off since the night before and remained off until he showed back up at the house, making it impossible to verify his movements. When pressed on why his phone was off, Andrin abruptly changed demeanor, coldly, and without explanation. He stated he would not answer any further questions without an attorney. At that point, it became clear to detectives that something was wrong, but with no physical body and only circumstantial evidence, they had no choice but to release him. He was placed under a travel restriction order and discreet surveillance began. Still, even under watch, Andrin managed to slip away. For nearly 12 hours, authorities lost track of him. During that window of time, he visited multiple hardware stores across San Antonio, making disturbing purchases: a shovel, heavy-duty trash bags, a small hatchet, gloves, duct tape, and fire starter fluid. He paid in cash and kept his phone off, seemingly aware of how to avoid detection. But surveillance footage from the stores eventually revealed his movements. Meanwhile, forensic results had come back. Bloodstains found inside the house, including those on the bathroom, light switch, and bedroom floor, were confirmed to match Andrin's DNA. With growing concern and mounting suspicion, police obtained a search warrant for a deeper sweep of the Macdonald home, including all digital devices. At some point during his brief disappearance, Andrin had returned to the house, but didn't stay long. Shortly afterward, he was spotted entering a local gun shop. There, he purchased a large caliber handgun and several boxes of ammunition, again using cash. But in a bizarre turn, after paying for the firearm, Andrin simply turned around and walked out of the store, leaving the gun and ammo behind on the counter to the officers monitoring him. Andrin appeared disoriented, his eyes blank, his movements stiff and strange, as though he were mentally unraveling. But to veteran investigators, the behavior didn't read as instability. It felt calculated, like the beginnings of an insanity defense. He was arrested outside the shop without incident. During his physical processing, officers noted several fresh scratches across his hands and forearms, thin, curved marks consistent with fingernail scratches. When asked to explain them, Andrin couldn't, but no one in the room needed him to. The implication was clear. There had been a struggle. Nearly 48 hours had passed since anyone had seen Andrin Macdonald. The evidence was becoming increasingly grim. Authorities launched a large-scale search across Bexar County and surrounding areas. Hundreds of officers, volunteers, and concerned locals joined the effort. Fields, forests, and rural backroads were combed for signs of the missing woman. But despite the scale of the search, nothing substantial turned up. No clothing, no cell phone, no body. A thorough analysis of the digital devices seized from the house offered no new leads. Then, during a second detailed search of the couple's vehicles and garage, investigators made a breakthrough in the garage. They found a set of newly purchased tools and materials items that matched the receipts and surveillance. Footage from the hardware stores Andrin had visited But it was what they found in the trunk of Andrin's Porsche Macan that turned the case. Wrapped in plastic was an old hammer. At first glance, it looked ordinary, but upon closer inspection, it held dark reddish stains and several long strands of hair clinging to the metal head. Forensic testing confirmed the worst. The blood and tissue belonged to Andrin. So did the hair. It was no longer a missing persons case. Investigators now had their first piece of physical evidence linking Andrin Macdonald directly to his wife's likely murder. However, the hammer's handle had been meticulously wiped clean. No fingerprints. When investigators confronted Andrin with the discovery, he flatly denied ever seeing the hammer before, insisting someone must have planted it in his vehicle. Despite the mounting evidence against him, Andrin was granted bail set at $500,000, sum he paid without hesitation, and was released shortly thereafter. Once back home, he made no effort to participate in the ongoing search efforts for his missing wife. Instead, he clung to his original story. He and Andrin had argued, he left to cool off, and when he returned, she was gone. He claimed to have tried contacting her afterward, sending both texts and voice messages, many of which were recovered from his phone. Some of those messages were emotional, even desperate, telling her their daughter was crying and pleading for her to come home. All was sent around midnight. Not long after, his phone was turned off again. The next morning, by Andrin's account, he dropped their daughter Alina off at his mother's house and began searching for Andrin. Meanwhile, the official search continued with increasing urgency but little progress. Investigators, now convinced something deeply sinister had occurred, turned their attention to the couple's history, digging into the cracks. Beneath the surface of what had seemed like a picture-perfect life, it didn't take long to uncover a darker reality. Although the Macdonalds had built a highly successful business together, their marriage had long been strained. While Andrin served in the military, it was Andrin who managed most of the business's daily operations. The imbalance in workload had caused tension, but deeper issues had been simmering for years. Back in 2016, when Andrin was stationed in Alabama for 6 months, emotional distance grew between them. Just before his return, Andrin messaged him saying it would be better if they separated and that he didn't need to come home. Upon his arrival, Andrin learned Andrin had been seeing another man during his absence, a man named O'Brien, someone from her early years in Jamaica. According to sources, O'Brien had a reputation as a dangerous figure in the Jamaican criminal underworld. The two had reconnected during one of Andrin's trips back home, and their relationship had reignited. He even began visiting her in Texas. Soon after, the Macdonalds filed for divorce. Under Texas law, their considerable assets, including the business, would need to be divided equally. This became a major point of contention. Andrin believed she was entitled to a greater share, having built the company's operations from the ground up. Andrin, however, felt everything belonged to him. He had funded the initial startup, brought her to the US, paid for her college, and helped her obtain citizenship. 6 months later, the divorce proceedings were paused. To outsiders, it appeared they had reconciled for their daughter's sake. Perhaps, but close friends saw the truth. The wounds hadn't healed. According to Caroline Garner, Andrin's best friend and assistant, Andrin remained controlling, emotionally manipulative. He viewed Andrin and everything she had built, something he owned. Caroline told detectives that not long before she disappeared, Andrin had confided in her, saying, "If anything ever happens to me, just know it was Andrin." The conflict deepened over Andrin's continued trips to Jamaica, which Andrin strongly opposed, knowing she would likely meet O'Brien. Still, Andrin made her own choices. Then, 2 weeks before she vanished, Andrin discovered that Andrin had quietly registered a new company in her own name and had transferred some of their shared assets into it. To Andrin, it was a betrayal. To investigators, it looked like a possible motive. On the morning of July 11th, 2019, 4.5 months after Andrin disappeared, a local farmer named Clinton Clend was walking across his large semi-wild property on the outskirts of San Antonio. While surveying the overgrown land for future clearing, he was struck by a strong, foul odor. Initially assuming it was a dead animal, he followed the scent, prepared to bury or dispose of the remains. He first came across a cow skull and some old bones, but nearby, under a scattering of branches, he discovered something far more disturbing: a severely decomposed human body. Clinton immediately called authorities. The remains were recovered and transported to the medical examiner's office. The body was unclothed, and due to the advanced state of decomposition, few initial details could be confirmed aside from the fact that the victim was female. However, given the location and timing, investigators strongly suspected it was Andrin Macdonald. DNA analysis soon confirmed those suspicions. The medical examiner, limited by decomposition, couldn't conclusively determine the cause of death, but they did note significant trauma: a broken jawbone and a fracture at the base of the skull, injuries consistent with being struck by a blunt object. The nature of the wounds aligned with the shape and weight of the hammer found in Andrin's car. There was also another chilling detail. Much of the woman's hair was missing. At first, this raised questions, but when examiners found partial burn marks on her right hand, they concluded that someone had attempted to destroy the body, using fire, likely in an effort to eliminate evidence. With the discovery, Andrin Macdonald was formally charged with murder and taken back into custody. Interestingly, the area where the remains were found had already been searched multiple times by law enforcement and volunteers, but the specific location, just 60 feet off the road, was behind a locked fence on private land, and without a warrant, it had remained untouched. It was pure chance that led Clinton Clend to the site that day, and pure determination from investigators that brought them one step closer to justice. When investigators informed Andrin Macdonald that Andrin's remains had been found and that evidence pointed to blunt force trauma, his demeanor shifted dramatically. No longer denying involvement, he signaled that he was ready to cooperate. Through his attorney, Andrin offered to tell the full story on one condition: a lighter sentence. What followed was a carefully crafted narrative that painted Andrin not as a killer, but as a man pushed to the brink. He spoke of betrayal, of losing control, of fear. According to him, Andrin had been unfaithful. She had begun secretly moving parts of their joint business into her own name and was planning to run it with her new partner. But most painful of all, Andrin said, was the looming fear that she would take their daughter away from him. He claimed Andrin had threatened to leave him with nothing: no money, no business, and no child. On the night of the incident, they argued, again intensely. He said the confrontation escalated when Andrin became physically aggressive, allegedly hitting him first. He insisted he only acted in self-defense. During the struggle, she suffered a small cut. In a moment of anger, he admitted to pushing her, saying she fell, and then, while trying to keep her down, he kicked her and stepped on her chest to prevent her from rising. Then he heard footsteps in the hallway. It was their daughter, Alina, calling out for her mother. In a panic, Andrin said he rushed out of the room before she could walk in, picked Alina up, and carried her back to her bedroom, telling her that Mummy would come check on her soon. When he returned to the master bedroom, Andrin was still on the floor, but this time she wasn't moving. He said she was unresponsive, and though he insisted she had been alive moments earlier, he now feared the worst. He believed he may have accidentally caused her death by applying too much pressure to her chest. During the altercation, realizing the severity of the situation, Andrin claimed he panicked. He removed Andrin's clothing and burned it in their backyard. Then, under cover of darkness, he transported her body outside the city to a remote plot of land, private property shielded by a fence, and left her there near the decomposed remains of a cow. After returning home, he began crafting an alibi. He sent multiple texts and voice messages to Andrin's phone, pleading with her to come home, mentioning their daughter's distress. It was all part of a narrative he hoped would convince others she had simply left after an argument. He then woke Alina, took her to his mother's house, and asked her to care for the child while he went out to search for his missing wife. To further sell the story, Andrei visited several hospitals, inquiring about patients with Andrin's last name. At one facility, when a woman with the same surname had recently been admitted, he nearly fainted, overwhelmed not by grief, but by the possibility that his deception might unravel. By the time police brought him in for questioning the following day, they still lacked enough physical evidence to hold him. He was released, but according to his own account, that was when the darkest thoughts began to take root. Fearful that the body might eventually be discovered, Andrei began considering more extreme actions. He visited a hardware store and purchased a hatchet, a shovel, fire starter fluid, and heavy-duty plastic bags. His intent, he admitted, was to dismember and incinerate the body, then scatter the remains across various locations. But when he returned to the dump site, he said he couldn't bring himself to do it. Instead, he poured flammable liquid over Andrin's remains and set it alight. The fire sputtered out quickly. It only managed to singe her hair and partially char one of her hands. Frustrated and desperate, Andrei claimed he snapped. In a fit of rage, he retrieved an old hammer from his car and struck the body repeatedly before finally regaining control of himself and stopping. He then covered the remains with scattered cow bones and branches, hoping they would never be found. Investigators later asked him about a visit to a gun store where he purchased a pistol and ammunition, only to leave them behind on the counter. Andrei said he couldn't explain his actions. His mind was clouded. He hadn't slept in days. He was spiraling. The case dragged on for years. The outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic delayed court proceedings significantly. Hearings didn't begin until January 2023. At trial, Andrei's defense team worked tirelessly to humanize him. They portrayed him as a man crushed by betrayal, terrified of losing his daughter and his livelihood. They argued that Andrin and her lover had conspired to cut him out completely, and that the events leading up to her death were the product of emotional pressure and panic, not premeditation. But the prosecution countered with one damning truth. For 5 months, Andrei had remained silent. He had concealed his wife's body, lied to investigators, and built an elaborate ruse to avoid accountability. What complicated the case further was the condition of the body. The advanced state of decomposition meant forensic examiners could not definitively establish a cause of death. The trauma to her skull and jawbone could have been inflicted before or after death. Andrei's claims that he accidentally killed her during a struggle and struck her corpse later in despair could not be disproven. In February 2023, the jury reached a verdict that shocked many. Andrin Macdonald was acquitted of murder. Instead, he was found guilty of manslaughter and evidence tampering. The sentence, 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15. Custody of his daughter Alina was awarded to her maternal grandmother. Then came a chilling twist. Later that same year, Andrei's father Andrin Macdonald was brought to trial in Jamaica for the murder of his third wife, Hannah Hamilton. During the investigation, authorities began re-examining the suspicious death of his first wife, Camila, which had long been dismissed as accidental. Evidence now suggested Andrin may have been involved in that case as well. If convicted, he too could face life in prison. The revelation raised an unsettling question. Was Andrei's crime an isolated tragedy, or part of a deeper, darker legacy? A lineage of violence hidden behind family walls, stretching across generations, finally exposed in the most tragic way imaginable. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support truly means a lot. Don't forget to hit that like button, leave a comment, and share it with others. It really helps the channel grow. Your engagement makes a huge difference. See you in the next one.